Do you enjoy swimming in the warm and calm coastal waters of our Florida oceans? When you go out to eat, do you happen to indulge in seafood? Are you interested in medicine and developing cures for terminal illnesses such as cancer? Interestingly enough, something that these components all have in common happens to be coral reefs. Coral reefs happen to be one of the most important marine ecosystems that we have in our oceans, and unfortunately, they are dying at a very rapid rate. From a very young age, I've always had a love for the ocean. And because of this, I've always understood how important our coral reefs are to our marine ecosystems. Your love of the ocean may not run as deep as mine, but the death of our coral reefs is something that everybody in the world should be concerned about. Two scientists that think the degradation of coral reefs is just as important as I think it is happen to be Sam Tyker and Gator Halpern. They are the founders of Coral Vita, whose entire foundation is focused on utilizing techniques to grow coral up to 50 times faster, while also boosting its resiliency to the warming and acidifying oceans that threaten coral survival. Before I tell you more about what the Coral Vita Foundation is doing in order to replenish and regrow our world's coral reefs, it's extremely important to understand why coral reefs are so important to our marine ecosystems. Coral reefs are economic powerhouses, which means they generate billions and billions of dollars each year in revenue, whether it be from fisheries or tourism. Also, according to Coral Vita, coral reefs happen to house 25% of our marine ecosystems. This means that they support 25% of all marine life within coral reefs. And interestingly enough, like we talked about earlier, a certain sea slug is found within these coral reefs, which California State University is said to be using for cancer study research. Coral reefs also happen to offer a natural coastal barrier protection. According to Insider, if we were to build a man-made coastal seawall, it would cost $2.5 million per mile. There are so many positive things that coral reefs do for us. You would think that it would be more important to protect and preserve these marine ecosystems. Unfortunately, that is not the case. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, over the past 30 years, we have lost 50% of our coral ecosystems. Coral Vita also projects that this number to increase to 90% by 2050. Coral Vita also states that our Caribbean coral is currently within a crisis, with 80% of our Caribbean coral having died. It is extremely important for us to understand why our corals are degrading so quickly in order for us to find solutions in order to stop our coral deaths. One of the main causes of coral death happens to be global warming. Global warming happens when our ocean temperatures continue to rise. As ocean temperatures continue to rise, this causes something called coral bleaching, where coral happen to expel the microalgae within them that creates these beautiful, bright, and vibrant colors. The microalgae also happens to be their nutrients and sustenance. So as they expel that microalgae, they are also losing their main food source. Coral bleaching is known to kill vast amounts of coral in very, very little time. Another issue that we have with our coral dying happens to be overfishing. Overfishing happens when we go into a coral reef and we fish too much. Believe it or not, fish are just as important to marine ecosystems as coral are. Fish eat the macroalgae found on the outside of coral. When there's not enough fish to feed upon the macroalgae within the coral, the macroalgae continues to grow and eventually will end up suffocating and killing the coral. And finally, and probably the saddest of all, one of the reasons our corals happen to be dying happens to be from direct human impact from us. This happens with poor developmental practices, pollution, and runoff. But fortunately, with all this sadness, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with Coral Vita. Coral Vita's mission is to assess, create, raise, install, and monitor corals. Their main focus is to replenish our world's coral reef, and they do this with the process called assisted evolution. We kind of touched on it at the beginning of this presentation. Coral Vita takes coral and boosts their resiliency to warmer temperatures and more acidic waters, allowing them to survive longer. Coral Vita also utilizes what's called land nurseries, which allows them to grow coral 50 times faster, and as well as a different diversity of different corals, versus an oceanic nursery, which is susceptible to global warming as well as storms. It's incredible what Coral Vita is doing to help replenish our world's coral. You may be wondering how there's different things that we can do to make a difference. Coral Vita actually has options for donations to their entire foundations. You can make small donations that go directly to Coral Vita that go back into their project of replenishing our world's coral. Coral death has been caused by human error, and it is our job to correct it, for our future depends on it.